many are still grieving. Some families will be lost to one another forever. To those of you who face the difficulties of reconnecting with family and establishing ongoing relationships, we say sorry. We offer this apology in the hope that it will assist your healing and in order to shine a light on a dark period of our nation's history. To those who have fought for the truth to be heard, we hear you now.
You're listening to Adopt Perspective podcast, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption. I'm your host and president of Jigsaw Queensland, Jo Sparrow. This podcast is a production of Jigsaw Queensland Post-Adoption Support Service. However, the views expressed are those of the people participating and not necessarily Jigsaw Queensland. The podcast discusses adult themes and listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Adopt Perspective. I'm your host, Jo Sparrow, and today we have a very special guest, Dorothy Peel. Dorothy, or Dot as we'll call her today, was just 18 years old when she lost her daughter to adoption in Perth in 1973. At the time, she was sent from Kalgoorlie, Western Australia, to an unmarried mother's home in Perth, just 6 weeks before the due date. Since then, Dot has struggled with memory gaps regarding her experience, particularly surrounding her time in the hospital during and after her daughter's birth. These lost memories left Dot with many unanswered questions until she applied for her files from the unmarried mother's home and the hospital where she delivered her daughter. What she discovered from those files was chilling, and it may hold the key to some of the answers that she's long been searching for. Dot, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jo, for the opportunity to tell my story in a safe place. I follow your podcast.
Thanks, Dot. That's lovely to hear. Could you share a little about what life was like for you in Kalgoorlie in 1972 before you discovered that you were pregnant?
Yes, I grew up youngest of five, and I lost my dad when I was 10 years old. The era was children should be seen and not heard. When I was 14, I was pursued by a young boy, and I was in a relationship with him for 4 years. So that took me to 18. He got his driver's license and a car and moved on. I was shattered. My mum remarried, and she just started going out and engaging in social activities with her husband. And I found that I had a lot of free time and was at home. After I finished work, I would go home and be by myself. And I think what happened was I was feeling alone and unloved when I look back at that time of my life. Mm-hmm. So I started going out with my friends and began a relationship with another lovely boy. He was studying full-time at university, and I was working full-time as a cashier. And within a month or something, I found that I was pregnant. Mm. So I did tell him, and then after a month or two, I told my mum. There was silence, and I remember overhearing her say, "She can't keep the baby." That stuck with me. And then I was shipped off to the doctor. When I went to the doctor after the pregnancy being confirmed, he basically said to me, adoption or abortion. And I just could not think about abortion. And then he handed me some information regarding the unmarried mother's home in Perth. So now I can't remember anything between then and going to Perth with my mum. She took me to Perth. I spent a little bit of time with a cousin leading up to the 6 weeks prior going into unmarried mother's home. And when I went in there, I was taken to an office, and a social worker was sitting behind the desk and basically telling me the ropes, the system of the unmarried mother's home. And then she said to me, there's a girl in here from Kalgoorlie, and you will not talk to anyone in Kalgoorlie about the girl residing there. And I was intimidated, and I was silenced again. So then another two, so I went into the home. I can't really remember much about it. I remember walking around the oval and going to a deli with the girls to buy our chocolates or whatever we did, maybe once a week or something. And I remember rubbing my tummy and telling my baby, I might get emotional, that I can't give her the opportunities that she needs. So, but according to my interview records that I received when I applied for them, 2 weeks after entering the unmarried mother's home, I was interviewed, and on two occasions, one occasion I told them that I hadn't decided what I was going to do. And then on another occasion, it appears to be 3 days later, they documented that I said that I would adopt. I can remember things like being told to me like a child needs two parents to raise them, and what support have you got at home, that sort of thing. So and then the next memory I have is about 2 weeks later, I was told to go and wash the dining room floor. It was a big dining room floor, and I questioned it in my head. I don't remember doing it out loud, thinking that, wait a minute, I'm not rostered on, so why am I washing the floor? And so I washed the floor, and then straight after that, they took my blood pressure. I was taken into a room and they took my blood pressure. So after that, I have no memory.
But before we move forward with your story, how have the gaps affected you over the years?
Well, when I went back to Kalgoorlie, no one spoke about my child. And I had this mantra in my head that I was numb and I was silenced. So if anyone asked about it, but I don't remember people asking about it, but that's what I had in my head, just those two things. And I felt guilty. So it was for a long, long, long time, like for 50 years that I had that in my head.
Yeah.
Mm.
So the last thing you remember at the unmarried mother's home is going into that other room after you'd been mopping the floor and having your blood pressure taken. What is your next memory after that?
A couple of things happened, which I don't know, in hindsight, maybe they traumatized me and that's why I can remember them. When I was, I didn't know that I was going to be induced because at that point I was only 38 weeks. And the morning of my child's birth, I was told I was going to be induced. So I remember being in the cubicle and there was a whiteboard up on the wall and there was a triangle on it. And I said to the nurse, there was only me and her in that cubicle, I said, what is that triangle? And she said, that's adoption. And then somehow I shut down again. And then the other memory I've got is when I was just about to give birth, I looked up and there was this large group of, I guess they were trainee midwives, probably between 10 and 15 were standing there. And I made eye contact with a girl that I went to school with. So after that, I must have shut down again. I didn't, the birth only took 3.5 hours because I was given drugs to stimulate the birth. But I didn't know that at the time, obviously. And after I didn't see or hear my child cry. And then I was taken back to a ward where there were expectant mothers and mothers with babes there. And I remember looking and seeing that, and then I put my head under the quilt and basically stayed there. And I remember thinking, how can they be doing this? So then the next time I remember is not going back to the unmarried home. I was there, and my mother coming in and standing at the end of my bed. I remember that happening. And then another time was a nurse coming to my room in the middle of the night and berated me, which made me shut down as well. So I don't remember leaving the unmarried mother's home with my mother, but I do remember being on the bus, and I remember feeling numb and silent. And then I remember walking across the grass to the Supreme Court where we had to go in and sign papers. And basically, I don't remember anything after that until I got home, and you were told that just to get on with life. You've got to get on with life now. So nothing was discussed, nothing was mentioned with no one.
How did your experience impact your relationships in the years that followed, Dot?
I married and I had 4 children. I worried about not being able to breastfeed because when I had my first child, there was no milk. And so I spoke to a doctor about it, and he said I would have been given suppressant, milk suppressant drugs or whatever they're called.
Yes, yeah.
But when hard times come up, I just thought that I was being punished, and I deserved it.
Yeah.
So I will try and get on with things. I think with my children, I think I role modelled honesty, communication, mistrust, suspicion, but I have got a good relationship with all my children.
Yeah. Did you tell them about your daughter?
Yes, when I made contact with my daughter, and there was a possibility of me meeting her. My son was 15, and I pulled him aside and talked to him. And I asked him just to don't go telling his siblings until I think it's the right time for them. And so then I told my next son, he was a little bit older, and then I told my daughter, my daughter was so excited that she has got a sister.
Yeah.
And then I told my other son as well.
So you did eventually reconnect with your daughter, which is such a significant and emotional part of your journey. Can you share a bit with us about how that reunion came about and what it was like for you?
Yes. Well, when my memory come back a little bit, 10 years after she was born, I contacted the department, might have been Department of Welfare or Community Services, to leave my address or my phone number with them. And I did that over the years. And then when the laws changed, I think it might have been 91, 92, somewhere around there, I waited 6 months. No, I went and got my records from the hospital, and then I waited 6 months, and then I contacted my daughter's father via the phone, and he relayed my message on to my daughter, and we started writing letters to each other. And then when she thought it was time, we met. in a park, and I gave her a brush. Why did I give her a brush? I'm still trying to work that out. She may still have it.
There's a good chance of that.
Yeah.
It always amazes me how many parks in Australia hold us safe during reunions, the first meeting, because so many people that I speak to had their first reunions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
what has reconnecting with your daughter brought to your life?
Peace, wholeness, perhaps. There were some wobbly moments, don't get me wrong. But these days, she had the opportunities that I wished for her. And these days we have got a great relationship. I'm so proud of who she is and what she's achieved. Sadly, I did meet her mum once, but sadly, that sort of stopped there.
Yeah. Very complex relationships to interweave.
Yeah. I try to understand.
You've mentioned, Dot, that there are significant gaps in your memories from the days surrounding your daughter's birth and adoption. Can you share how that's affected you personally? I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but what has it been like to live with those missing memories?
Confusing, just total confusion. For 50 years, I lived in a state of confusion about the whole experience.
Yeah.
And then I did engage in a survey leading up to the inquiry for forced adoption, the WA one.
Yep.
Both my daughter and I did, yeah. And then there was a documentary or an interview on 7:30 Report, and there was a lady who told her story about her experience with forced adoption. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I can relate to everything she's saying. And it really had an impact on me. And so I went and retrieved my records and sat down and started reading them. So for the first time, I felt like I was given permission, someone's listening, to read my medical records and start filling in the dates and when I went to hospital and how long I was in hospital and all that. And then I could see that the night I washed the dining room floor was the night that they admitted me into the hospital. And then from that night.
Yeah. Sorry, Dot, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but so you've written to both the Unmarried Mothers Home and the hospital applying for those files. Is that right?
I have.
Yeah. So keep going. You listed on that night.
So that night I was admitted to the hospital, and that started making me think. So that was like I was in hospital for 10 days before I had her. And I couldn't work that out. And then I started looking at medication forms. From that night, I was given 200 milligrams of a Barbitúric Amatil and 10 milligrams of Valium twice a day, every day, leading up to the day before I was induced. I can't get my head around that. It confuses me. Okay, my blood pressure was up and down, but why wouldn't it be? I was, 37, 38 weeks pregnant. There was no sign of preeclampsia. And when I looked at other people's stories in the inquiry, the women said that they had high blood pressure, but they were just put on light duties. And so all these things just made me question why. I don't understand how me and my daughter were being drugged. And so after the birth and I was taken back to the unmarried mother's home, I now believe that I was drugged for that 8 days as well, because I have very little memory of that, apart from the couple of times where I was traumatised in there. And so I decided to contact the unmarried mother's home and ask for my records. And that was helpful because they sent me a copy of the interview I had with them, telling me that I wasn't sure about adoption. Also, some of those records showed the dates, some dates which I was a bit confused about. So that was helpful. And then, the CEO did reply, and they were very, 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 very apologetic. And they have offered me a chance to go in and meet with them. But I can't do that because what I can't afford to be told is it was the way it was back then. It just does not cut it. Even people saying sorry to me, I feel like it's an insult.
Yeah.
I can't explain that. And then
I think you explained it very well, Dot.
Oh, thank you. I wrote to the complaints department at the hospital, and they did some investigation and replied to me, but I just was not satisfied with the answer. And so then I wrote to the executive of the hospital, and once again he was very apologetic and said that he would investigate. And I requested that the pharmacist be part of that investigation, just so I could get some answers about the effects of the drugs and any side effects of the drugs, because I was starting to question my memory.
Mm-hmm. Because you're questioning what is a real memory, what isn't, why is it missing, all of those things. Yeah.
Yes. It was very confusing. And it took me back to being a 19-year-old as well, which also was a bit scary and confusing.
Yeah.
So then I wasn't satisfied with the executive's answer as well. And he also offered me an opportunity to go in and meet with them. But once again, I could not sit there and be told, things have changed. That's the way they did it back then. It was a regime, they followed that. We don't do that anymore. I could not. That would just trigger me. Mm-hmm. And so I've left it at that. I'm not saying I'll never go back to those places and meet with them, but not at the moment. So I'm hoping that making my story go public is going to somehow shift my thinking out of that state of confusion, because I've done so much research on the drugs. I've spoken to mentors, I've gone and been part of groups, and I've not been able to shift the sadness and the confusion. I just feel like there was a reason why they wanted to sedate me. And I don't know what that was.
Dot, how has this entire experience shaped your life?
It's changed my personality. When I went back to Kalgoorlie, I remember feeling defiant. Also, right at the beginning, when I found out I was pregnant and I was sent off to Perth, I remember thinking, no one's taking responsibility. And I felt like I took responsibility on for everyone. My mother, my family, my boyfriend, for everyone. And that somehow has continued on with my life, because there's been so many times when I feel like I'm overstepping my responsibility with taking responsibility for situations. And I'm aware of that now through this last lot of process since I've had this information. I'm aware of that now, and I try really, really hard to break that really bad pattern.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Your courage and resilience in the face of such painful experiences is truly inspiring. And I wish you all the best on your journey of discovery and healing and connection. And I do hope that speaking about your story with us here today does give you some measure of what you're looking for.
Yeah. I do want to say, Jo, that I think over the years I have compartmentalised my life.
Yeah.
And I did go on and have a career in children's services. I owned and operated my own childcare centre, and I did give thousands of little people a voice. And I am also so proud of the children, my children and theirs, to be part of their life and to help them navigate through their life. You know, I think with my daughter, we have got a good relationship. That's from a respect, openness, and a liking for each other.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah, thanks, Jo. I look forward to the podcast, as my children all do as well.
I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you for telling me.
Yeah. Okay.
For anyone tuning in, remember that every experience in adoption is unique, and it's never too late to begin your own journey of exploration. And if you're looking for some resources, support, or simply a space to share, Jigsaw Queensland is here to help. If you'd like to support the podcast, leave us a review, share the episodes, or let us know what you think by emailing or calling us, because we really do love to hear from you. Meanwhile, if you have a story that you'd like to share with us and you'd like to be interviewed for the podcast, jump onto the main podcast page of the Jigsaw Queensland website and complete the prospective guest form that you'll find there. And note that Adopt Perspective can be listened to by people all over the world. Thank you for listening. I'm Jo Sparrow. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Adopt Perspective podcast. If you'd like to find out more, go to the podcast page on www.jigsawqueensland.com and you'll find a wealth of information and resources on the website. If you reside in Queensland, you can reach Jigsaw Queensland's Forced Adoption Support Service on toll-free 1800 210313, or you can call Jigsaw on 07 33 58 6666. If you live in another state of Australia, you can still call the Forced Adoption Support Service number, and your call will be answered by the Forced Adoption Support Service in the state that you're calling from. In every other state, Relationships Australia operates this service. A big thank you to Matt Sparrow for composing and recording our original theme music. Until next time, I'm Jo Sparrow saying farewell from Adopt Perspective, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption.